So, as we're starting running records, it's a good time to look at the essay portion of the Foundations of Reading test because one of the two essays often has you look at a miscue analysis of an oral read aloud and gives you some symbols and then asks you to do something with it to answer the question. And so, let's go look at the question first. Using your knowledge of word identification strategies. So, the first task is figuring out what's being asked. And it's okay to take notes, like circle this stuff. Using your knowledge of word identification strategies, examples, use of phonics, analysis of word structure, context clues, identification of sight words, write a response in which you identify one of Daniel's strengths and one of Daniel's weaknesses. Be sure to cite specific evidence from the information shown. And that's it. Don't overthink this. This is just an essay question. This isn't really a written response per se. It's more, you got to remember, an essay test, that's a genre. It's not, you'll never ever write like that again. So don't worry about it too much and just think about answering the question. In fact, go back to the way you've been beaten since 5th grade to answer questions. TTQA it and turn the question around. If you just said, one of Daniel's strengths is, and then you provide say, for example, context clues, and then you define context clues, then you provide 2 examples that prove he's good with context clues, that's all you need to do. It's a claim, key definition, 2 pieces of evidence. For strength, claim, key definitions, 2 pieces of evidence. That's it. Now, if you have time, you can go back and embellish like the end. I always like to throw in a teaching tip, like something that I might do next for Daniel. It's not required, but these are being scored by human beings and they have emotions. And if you speak to the person as, as a human and talk that you help Daniel and you can prove that you can use your content knowledge about reading to help Daniel, it might work. That being said, they just have to read like thousands of these. Like you're just locked in some room, just boom, 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 hammering, reading tests. So you want to keep it clear and to the point. Don't embellish. Just answer and move on. But what's that mean? Well, let's go look at the rubric real fast. So these are scored on 4, 3, 2, 1. And if you go down here, did you answer the question? All right. Now look here. Substantial, appropriate, and application of subject matter knowledge. Honestly, this is just use of keywords. They literally tell you in the questions, like they give you examples. If you just use 2 of those or one of the, because they only ask for one, you provide a key definition that explains your understanding. That's all you need to do, and then you provide 1 or 2 examples from the text. So then a 3 response. Let's look at the difference. See, it says there are relevant examples, high quality relevant examples. This is what we call key levers in rubrics, like what bumps. This is a 4 and a 3. So these are definitely, this is what we call a holistic rubric in a sense. You're being measured on 4 different kinds of scales, but it's, 4, 3, 2, and 1. You have to mix and match what they are. So when you look at, so if you look here, you're looking at high quality relevant examples. And at a 3, some acceptable relevant examples. So you have a lowering in, frequency or the quality of the examples because they went from high quality to acceptable and some. So that's, the difference between, do you want to put in 2 examples or 1 examples? Literally, that's how these people are trained. They're automatons that just score like, ding, 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 score, score, score. So don't overthink it. And then you can look, then when you get to the 2 and the 1, now you're not answering the question, you're providing maybe inaccurate examples, you're not giving definitions. That's a key example. And we're going to annotate some of the answers and try to prove this correct. But what we're talking about again is just outlining it. As soon as you get this question, you can just make that outline. So for example, when you could just outline the strength. You could just put, put in strength. And then you would put in your, what is the strength you're going to use. And that might be, so you could, so if you wanted to put in a strength, say comprehension monitoring, you could, and then you'd have to give a definition. And they would, this is when a learner is evaluating their understanding. You would be doing this quickly. Understanding, usually evident in pauses and self-corrections. And then you can go and provide 2 examples. So you can go back to your text and find an example. So we're seeing here, Emily, all right, so where's her pauses, short pauses and long pauses? Seems to always be around when she is looking at compound words. And so we could write something like that. And so you just have to put an example, with pauses on unknown words. Such as goldfish, and then you could get an example of a self-correction. Because remember, for strength and weakness, you want to have 2 examples of each. All right? So where it's another example that proves that comprehension monitoring could be a strength, if that's what you decide to do. Well, let's go back and look one more time. Well, she's doing, we have some corrections at fever and remember, and, for example, pause and unknown words such as goldfish, uses self-corrections such as remember for remember, and copy and company. That's it. So real fast, you would just jot that down for strength and you would repeat yourself for weakness. So when you get the test, just do that. It's 3 bullet points for strength, 3 bullet points for writing, and then don't get creative. Just super TTQA it and just answer the question because that's what you're being judged on. So be boring. Here's Daniel, and it says, identify 1 strengths in word in using word identification strategies. 1 strength Daniel has in word attack strategies. Dot, dot, dot. Fill in the blank. Then this is dot, 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 fill in definition. Dot, 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 example 1. Also, for example, dot, 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 also illustrated in, dot, 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 and done. Do that for that, and watch this. Boom. And just change the word to weakness. I mean, it's a formula. That's all this is. It's an essay test. It's not real writing. It's not authentic. It has nothing to do with your ability to teach reading. You just need to crank out and spit out a couple facts so that you can get a minimum of a 3 on the essay so it doesn't pull down your overall score. That's all you're trying to do. You're just trying to game the system and get the thing done. All right, so that's 1 strength and 1 weakness. That's how you write it. So let's go look and now compare a few of the examples. Looking here at Daniel, to understand Daniel's reading capabilities, I made observations of his teacher's notes on a particular reading performance. Avoid this. No one cares about your meta. That's just filling up space. From these notes, I will identify 1 strength and 1 weakness. Again, you didn't answer the question. Just flat out answer the question. 1 strength is, 1 weakness is. Move on. 1 weakness, so that whole paragraph is just unnecessary. 1 weakness is that evident in reading is repetition. All right, although this only occurred twice, so contradicting yourself, it shows that it can still have a tendency to rush through the assignment. So we could put the strength, was that a strength or a weakness they were talking about there? Weakness. So the weakness in this example was repetition. Now, as you recall, when you're doing a running record, repetitions aren't counted as errors. So that right there should be a trigger to you. All right. And then do they define repetition? No, there's no definition. Let's look at the examples. So it says here, it could be possible that he's repeating the phrase twice or he heard it out loud. Like, it's just pure speculation. There's no, like, you do not speculate in this. You need pure evidence. It says it repeats himself. There's a word that he just struggled with saying out loud. No, like, nowhere is there an example from the text. That's why this item, if you write like this, you are going to fail the Foundations Reading Test. Let's go look at a different one. So the weak one. All right, we're looking at the strong response. All right, there's a brief intro, and it's set up with like a, an introduction paragraph and strength and weaknesses. You can do that. I don't think it's necessary. Like I said, these people score so many of these. Just get to the point. Daniel shows both strengths and weaknesses in reading the passage aloud to his teacher. He's able to use context clues to correct himself. That is a strength. However, his greatest weakness appears to be his analysis of word structure. All right? So, Daniel's use of context clues is strong. Right there. And then do they provide a definition? He often says an unknown word incorrectly, but then relies on the meaning of the words around it to correct himself. See how they weaved in that definition? We can look at that as a strength, right? As the definition. Context clues. All right, so you right there. You have a definition. Let's look for example. For example, when he reads container's counter in the phrase container of fish food, Daniel realizes that it doesn't make sense and he reads the phrase correctly. Also uses context clues can be seen when he corrects goalish for goldfish and fib for fishbowl. He is taking meaning of the sentence. He did not self-correct when he reads spilled for sprinkled because his guess still works with context. Like right there, that is a huge key that they're showing that they know key understandings, and that's the difference between a 4 and a 3 right there, this line, because it's a deep understanding of how you would use the MSQ analysis and understand that sprinkled and spilled work in context of the piece. And they've almost 4 examples here, so not even just the 2, like those are 4 examples. That's why this piece totally wins. So what you have to do for homework, EDU 407, is there are also another weak, all right, and another strong response. And they give you the answer. But I want you to spend some time and annotate it or outline it, kind of like I was doing here. And really consider it, because this is all you have to do. Like would raise our pass rates a lot across the nation by just like spending some time figuring out how to game the essay. It's all you really need to do. And you're just doing the same kind of writing we've taught you when you answer questions forever. It's a claim, a warrant, and some evidence. The difference between the 3 and the 4 is that special knowledge. That is what gets harder to fake. But usually if you can score a 3 on the essay, that's enough to where it won't damage you on your overall passing ability. So that's kind of it. Those are my tips for the Foundations of Reading Test essay.